Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and the winner for the poll for today's video was about Northern Ireland being unable to prepare for a no-deal Brexit. So, unless Parliament takes control of the Brexit process next week, we're very likely to leave the EU on Friday, April the 12th, without a deal. This has dire consequences for the whole of the UK, of course, and our closest trading and political partners in Europe, but none more so than the people of Ireland, both Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. The Good Friday Agreement set up a number of bodies comprising members of both parts of Ireland, as well as cross-border cooperative systems. These may no longer operate if a hard border existed and unhindered access across the border disappeared. Of course, the British government has said that they won't implement checks at the border, but they, just like the Republic of Ireland, will have no choice once the might of the international community comes down on them. If we have no trading agreement with the EU, then we must implement checks at the border. Fudges like trying to do checks away from the border have not been fleshed out. Although this is what politicians would prefer to do, nobody has come up with a plan to actually do it. And from the UK's point of view, it isn't just the Good Friday Agreement. The European Union Withdrawal Act specifically states in Article 10 that we must not diminish any form of North-South cooperation provided for in the Good Friday Agreement, the Northern Ireland Act as it is in the UK. So even if these checks were done away from the border, it would still be checks which are not supposed to be done according to that Good Friday Agreement. As people often happily point out, the Good Friday Agreement doesn't actually make a big song and dance about the border itself, so where those checks take place is completely irrelevant. In addition, Article 10 of the Withdrawal Act prohibits us from creating or facilitating border arrangements. And it doesn't just specify physical infrastructure, but any border arrangements that did not exist before exit date unless we have agreement with the EU. So we can't unilaterally do anything about those checks. So even creating a situation whereby the Republic of Ireland were forced to implement something would mean breaking our own laws. That would be our fault. And earlier this week, in another pathetic move on the Brexit blame game, Theresa May said that it was impossible for Northern Ireland to prepare for a no-deal Brexit. But not as a frank admission of her own failure, she pinned the blame squarely on the lack of a Northern Ireland Assembly. She said, "But I'm conscious of my duties as Prime Minister to all parts of our United Kingdom and to the damage to that union leaving without a deal could do, when one part of it is without devolved government and unable therefore to prepare properly." As if Stormont would have been able to solve the very problem that the best legal and political minds in both the UK and the wider EU couldn't solve in 2 years. However, the Prime Minister is right about one thing. Without Stormont assembling, whatever can be done to ease the situation cannot be done in Northern Ireland because there is nobody there to provide policy guidance to civil servants. The only way to rectify that is with direct rule again, but that's a hot potato nobody wants to pick up. So why isn't Stormont active? Well, at the start of 2017, the Deputy First Minister, the late Martin McGuinness, of the second largest party in the Assembly, Sinn Féin, resigned in protest over the failed and controversial Renewable Energy Initiative scheme. The scandal erupted when it turned out that the subsidies were actually encouraging people to burn more fuel than they actually would because the subsidies were worth more than the fuel. That made a bit of a mockery of the environmental thrust of the scheme. It allowed businesses to profit from it at a great cost to the people of Northern Ireland whose taxes were paying for it. The blame for this was placed squarely on the head of Arlene Foster, the head of the DUP and now First Minister of Stormont, but at the time she was the minister in charge of implementing that scheme. The DUP were blamed for not shutting the scheme down when the problems became apparent. Now, when Martin McGuinness resigned, he effectively disbanded the Assembly, as it must both have a First Minister and a Deputy First Minister to reflect the hugely divided politics and communities in Northern Ireland. Because Arlene Foster would not take responsibility and resign, Sinn Féin have refused to take their seat since. Now, the Assembly has not been in operation in all that time, and at a time when it was needed more than ever. As a result of Stormont gathering dust, the Brexit process has taken place with the only voice to make its way out of Northern Ireland, in the UK at any rate, being the DUP. So, were Sinn Féin right to close the Assembly? Well, I agree that they had a genuine grievance against Arlene Foster, and ministers in assemblies all over the democratic world would normally resign after being responsible for such a scandal. However, it has meant that the Brexit narrative has been controlled entirely by the DUP throughout the rest of the UK, so they've basically been giving the DUP a win on this one. Yes, she should have stepped aside and they couldn't force her to do so. How unfair, boo-hoo. But is her behaviour any different to any number of other ministers, including the Prime Minister, over the Brexit process in Westminster? No. And you don't see Labour abandoning their seats and walking out of Westminster in protest. They've sucked it up, kept banging on about it, as they should have done. That's what they should have done. Kept banging on about it in the Assembly, not letting it go. Kept banging on about it in the media, absolutely. But otherwise, got on with the job of pushing the interests of Northern Ireland. So where does that leave Northern Ireland now? Well, there are a great many matters devolved to Stormont in Northern Ireland. Although normal life can carry on sort of as normal, major constitutional issues like this need politicians to be able to instruct the civil service. This is not happening. The UK government are not wanting to talk about direct rule, as that would be adding insult to injury. If we crash out with no deal, the border issue will become a major international focus. We can't simply ignore international laws without consequences, and there is no solution which allows us to obey all of our international obligations in this matter. So basically, Northern Ireland is entirely reliant upon Westminster sorting themselves out to save the situation. But not to worry, they've got the DUP fighting their corner. Oh wait. Actually though, yesterday Nigel Dodds, the Westminster leader of the DUP, was hinting that they might actually be better to support Remain now, but it was only a hint. So there we go. I hope you found the video interesting. Don't forget to click the like button if you did, and subscribe for further content. Click the bell notification, and there's another poll up for the Monday's topic out now if you click on the channel name and then the community tab. So until next time, I'll see you later.